Welcome to the World Nuclear Association Strategic eForum Committing to Net Zero. Our webinar will start in just a few moments. We would like to thank the sponsors of our webinar, Urenco. They've sponsored the series of these World Nuclear Strategic eForums. I'd now like to introduce the moderator of our session, Zuzana, Bilbao et León.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this strategic eForum committing to net zero. So I think I don't have to tell you, because the world is paying very close attention this year to the UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP26, that will take place starting next week in Glasgow in the UK. So obviously this is fast approaching, and governments all over the world are being called on to commit to net zero greenhouse gas emissions targets. And I think you know that the COP26 presidency has called for a commitment to rapidly phase out coal. And even so, we see that the greenhouse gas emissions remain stubbornly high. I think that you just heard that yesterday there was a UN report from the UN meteorological group that actually announced that the emissions for 2020 were the highest that we had so far. So clearly, countries have are trying to move towards from natural gas to coal, but also recently you also followed how we have seen the energy prices have also gone up, threatening businesses and forcing many people to go into energy poverty. So I think that all these things are bringing the role of nuclear energy as much more recognized in this very onerous task, which is to achieve net zero. But today we are going to focus on what the nuclear industry and nuclear technologies can contribute to achieving this ambitious target. So obviously, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a matter for everybody, responsible individual, companies, governments. So today, let's focus on what are the nuclear companies going to do to address their greenhouse gas emissions. So for that, I have today with me a fantastic panel of representatives from several nuclear companies that have made pledges to commit to net zero. So if I can please ask you all, you are all with your cameras on. So I have the honor to share this virtual stage today with Laurence Gazagnes, which is the Senior Executive Vice President for Health, Safety and Environment at Orano. Very good to see you, Laurence. We also have Ralph Hunter, who is Chief Operating Officer at Exelon Nuclear Partners and also Vice President for Exelon Generation. Very good to see you, Ralph. We also have Zuzana Krejcirikova, who is Director of Public Affairs at CHES, and I hope we can hear you, Zuzana. How are you? We also have Roger Martella, who is Chief Sustainability Officer at GE. Hello, Roger. And then last but not least, we have Kirk Schnoebelen, who is Head of Sales at Urenco. Hello, Kirk. So I'm going to maybe start by inviting each and every one of you to explain to us why each one of your companies decided to commit to this net zero target. What do you think are the potential benefits and the challenges perhaps in making such commitment? So perhaps I'm going to start with Kirk.
Well, thanks, Zuzana. Urenco is a global company that delivers enriched uranium required to fuel about 1/3 of the world's nuclear reactors, enabling the generation of enormous quantities of carbon-free electricity. We do that from a platform of highly efficient plants in the UK, in the Netherlands, Germany, and the United States. Urenco joined the Climate Pledge with a goal of achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2040. We're currently working our roadmap to net zero, which will be finalized and communicated later this year. Really, the key advantage of this commitment is it's clearly the right thing to do, both for society and for Urenco. For nuclear power to be credible in the net zero debate, their supply chains must also be strongly committed to reducing carbon emissions. In addition, Urenco's net zero target is consistent with both the UK and Dutch government's net zero targets by 2050 and with RWA and Aeon's targets of 2040. All four entities have an ownership stake with Urenco. The other benefit of a net zero commitment from Urenco and the supply chain is that it enables an even stronger case for a more significant contribution from nuclear power toward net zero goals. Urenco recently commissioned a study supported by EDF, IAEA, and Lucid Catalyst on how to most efficiently reach the UK net zero target by 2050. This study, done by Aurora Energy Research, is entitled Decarbonizing Hydrogen in a Net Zero Economy and is available on our website. Aurora's models show that deploying renewables and nuclear for power and hydrogen production facilitate rapid decarbonization and reduce reliance on fossil fuels at a minimum cost. All of the scenarios that Aurora studied demonstrate that both renewables and nuclear together are able to provide the hydrogen volumes needed for net zero in 2050. The final benefit to Urenco's net zero commitment is credibility. We are strong advocates for a wider use of nuclear power and should not be in a position of failing to make our own commitments or reducing the impact of nuclear power's net zero contribution.
Thank you, Kirk, for that explanation. So let me go to Roger.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today and be part of the eForum. I really appreciate it, and we're honored to have this chance to share our thoughts. When it comes to GE's net zero commitments, and we've made two. One is for our own emissions, our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions to be carbon neutral by 2030. We think that's a pretty big deal for an industrial global company with a big global supply chain, and we're really passionate about succeeding in it. So that's our first commitment, but we've also made a commitment, an ambition to be net zero with our Scope 3 emissions for our sold products by 2050. So that's probably even the bigger deal, right? Because our products power the world, and we're committing to innovate the technology the world needs. So we're a 129-year-old company, and our legacy has always been focused on improving the quality of life for people all around the world through innovation and technology. And today we're focused on solving three of the world's most pressing sustainability challenges: the energy transition and climate change, the future of flight, and delivering precision healthcare to the half of the world's population that lack access to it. So it's all about improving the quality of life for people. And when we focus on energy, we want to do two things simultaneously. We want to decarbonize energy all around the world in the 170 countries where we operate. We want to decarbonize energy, make it more carbon neutral or reduce greenhouse gases. But at the same time, we want to build resiliency. And we think we can do both of these things simultaneously. We don't think it's an either or proposition. You can decarbonize and make energy more resilient at the same time, make it more accessible, make it more affordable, make it more reliable, make it more sustainable while you're removing greenhouse gases and while you're decarbonizing it. We know the solution to that is technology and innovation. Technology and innovation have to be key if we're going to meet this goal. And at GE, we know we're uniquely positioned to be part of the solution, given our legacy here, to make sure the world has access to reliable, affordable, sustainable power while we're decarbonizing it. Everything we do, we want to make sure we're acting consistently with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals from the UN take a very broad view of sustainability, focused on equity, focused on climate change, on improving environmental conditions, but also making sure people have access to economic opportunities, to transportation, to healthcare. We very much support this view. We want to make sure reliable electricity is part of our strategy to decarbonize at the same time. And we know it's challenging. If you look at the sectors we're in, which include nuclear energy, gas turbines, renewable energy, jet engines, and things like that, we see the challenges. And we know nuclear has a key role to play, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, more to the discussion. But we're excited to rise to the challenge of succeeding. We're really passionate, and we're investing today, and I'll talk about this a little more. We're investing today to make sure that we're thinking, not only about today's technology, but around the corner, where we're going to need to be successful with these mutual goals of decarbonizing the power sector, but making it more resilient at the same time. So thanks for the opportunity to share those thoughts.
Thank you very much, Roger. So now let me go to Chess, Zuzana Krejcirikova. Let's see whether your connection works.
Good afternoon. Does it work?
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, hopefully. So good afternoon from Prague. Regarding Chess, already before COP in Paris, we made our clear commitment to become carbon neutral by 2050. But taking into account scientific evidence, the demand for sustainability for public, and at the last, I would say, Fit for 55 and European Green Deal, we decided to go faster. And in May this year, we have published our new strategy called Clean Energy for Tomorrow. What does it mean? We want to reduce our carbon print by 2030. For the time being, we have around 39% of electricity generation generated by coal. So by 2030, we want to reduce our carbon footprint to 12%. The second thing, we want to massively invest into renewables. We want to build 6 gigawatts by 2030. And last, not last, but we want to go for nuclear. It means we have already declared our aim to build 1 new unit in Dukovany, but we also want to look at small modular reactors. Lastly, I would like to mention one area which is crucial for us, and is the area of energy services. We see there a big opportunity for us because if you see at the EU legislation, all these targets in energy efficiency and energy savings, there is big space. Not only in the Czech Republic, but also in the area of Central Europe and elsewhere. And the last thing, which is part of our vision, is the area of smart grids, because we own 2/3 of distribution grids in the Czech Republic. So we want to go for a smart future and for everything which is connected to digitalization of our services to our final customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuzana. So let me go to Exelon. Ralph, why did you decide to go to this net zero pledge?
Thanks, Emma, and thanks for letting me be on this panel, and thanks to the other panelists. This is a very good group. Exelon is in a sort of a unique position relative to other companies in this space. We've been on a climate change advocacy mission since 2005 for a couple of reasons. One is we happen to have the largest clean energy fleet in the United States, and it's a shame not to be putting that to good for the planet, right? So that's the first thing. But the second thing is we've grown to a point where we have 6 utilities, and those utilities have operations that have not always been clean, I'll say. And for those who don't know, Exelon consists of 2 basic divisions: a utilities division and a generations division. The utilities we own 6 different utilities, which is basically transmission and distribution, and we own a generation company and a customer-facing business, which supplies clean power to about 20 million homes and businesses in the United States. And the generation side has always been pretty easy for us because we own wind, solar, hydro, and a whole fleet of carbon-free nuclear assets. On the utility side, it's been more difficult. So recently, our CEO of Exelon Utilities, Calvin Butler, has made a commitment what he calls the path to clean for all 6 of our utilities on the utility side of our business. And then I'll talk about it a little bit later, but that commitment is to drive all the operational energy sources that the utility side uses to let greater than at least 50% carbon free by 2030, and then net zero by 2050. And then I'll talk about it in a future later on in the forum about how we're going to accomplish that. On the Genco side, we're treating this a little bit differently because we already have a fleet of carbon free assets. On that side of the business, it's how can we use those assets to have a positive impact on the climate change crisis. Our new CEO of the generation side, Joe Dominguez, who's just was appointed about a week ago, is huge climate advocate, climate crisis fighting advocate, I'll say. And he is very, very serious about taking this fleet of carbon-free energy sources, this nuclear fleet we own, and making sure that we are not only using it to power, provide power to our customers and homes, but also look for innovative ways to use that energy to fight other carbon generating industrial clients. For example, there's large data center customers that want to get off of fossil power that could be instead powered by nuclear assets. And I'll talk about a lot of other ones like that and fall in that same bucket. But basically, how can we use and how should we use our carbon-free assets to help fight this climate change situation and crisis that we're in globally?
Thank you, Ralph. So let me now go, last but not least, to Laurence from Orano.
Thanks for the opportunity to share with you Orano point of view. We do agree with the global issue we have concerning climate change, because finally it will be also a matter of preservation of resources and the protection of health, and maybe something about nutrition and being able to feed the people in the world. And the second point I'd like to raise that net zero is a balance at the Earth level. It makes no sense to speak about net zero at a local, business, or national level. This is a concept at the Earth level. So we want to contribute to the net zero, but I mean that we won't pledge for a net zero for Orano, but for the Earth. So we are already contributing to this by producing products and services for nuclear power, as you know, and as we need to take things even further, we even if we have already reduced by 60% our emissions since 2004, we want to go further, and we are going to keep progressing in this direction. And the objective we set in 2020 is to reduce by 40% our scope 1 and 2 between 2015 and 2025. And we will speak on that later on, but we try to manage and to measure all the progress we can do. And I'd like to say that this is a footprint issue. Concerning CO2, of course, power, disposable, water, and biodiversity. And maybe one day we will have to pledge for a global net zero, like we said before. And for us, all the business parts have their parts to do, and we need to go through strong mobilization. So this is the reason why we are so engaged in this net zero pledge.
Thank you, Laurence. So let me go a little bit more in detail and try to go more in depth on the various aspects and the challenges and the opportunities on your various net zero strategies. So perhaps I will start with Ralph. You said that Exelon has stated that you will reduce your operations driven emissions 50% by 2030. So can you maybe give us some examples of specific activities that are going to help you achieve this goal over the next decade?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Those goals are specific to the utility side of the business. I kind of mentioned that earlier. So with our 6 utilities, the operations-driven reductions, as you stated, greater than 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And if you look at the utility businesses, the 6 utilities, the biggest issues around carbon for them center really in 2 major buckets. One is how they power all the facilities, and 2 is the enormous vehicle fleet that we have across 6 utilities. It's a very large number of power line machines, cranes, all you can imagine, all the trucks you see on the road that take care of our power lines and our transmission distribution. Our commitment on the utility side is that the electrification of our vehicle fleet, we're going to have at least 50% of that fleet electrified by 2030. That's a major undertaking. There's some of these vehicles, they're not electric yet. So it's a significant effort on our part to make sure that we can achieve that goal. And then the second thing is that all of our facilities on the utility side to be powered by clean energy sources. So that's a pretty significant commitment too, depending on where our facilities are located. Access to clean energy can be difficult. So those are our two main areas on the utility side. And I touched a little bit on the Genco side, the generation side. The commitments there are very different because we already have a clean fleet. The commitments there are, how do we use that fleet for good? So I'll talk about a couple of things later today, but for example, hydrogen production. We believe that hydrogen has the capability to be a long-term energy storage medium for a carbon-free future. Well, we have the ability to produce hydrogen with a clean asset like a nuclear power plant. So that's one thing. We have the ability to take large industrial sources of large industrial customers off of fossil fuel and put them on nuclear fuel. A couple of examples around that are around that. You probably heard, for example, Bitcoin mining, for example. Huge users of fossil fuels to mine Bitcoin. If one believes that Bitcoin's not going away, then why should we be powering those mining facilities with carbon generating assets? So we're looking at the potential for possibly entering into that business and at least saying, look, if you're going to do this, do it with clean power. So that's one area. Large companies like Microsoft and Google and AWS, who have these huge data centers. I mean, these are massive data centers that basically power everything you use in the cloud. And they're growing like crazy around the world. And depending on where they're located, they can be powered by fossil. In addition, not only is their primary power typically fossil, because they have to be available all the time. I think it's 5.9 efficiency on these, or availability on these things. They have a whole set of backup generators. Well, guess what they are? They're diesels. So, and then they even have a tertiary set, which is batteries. So we're looking at how can we help in that space. That's a huge load across this country, and it's actually worldwide that we're looking at. And the third thing, the third kind of leg that we're looking at is the next generation of nuclear power and how that can play a very important role in decarbonizing the future. And that's small modular reactors, advanced reactors. And we're partnering and working with multiple vendors in that space as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you, Ralph. So let's go to Chess. Zuzana, you gave a few examples of what you are doing to achieve this net zero, but of course, I think that the biggest challenge here is the fact that Chess has a very diverse portfolio that includes low carbon and also carbon intensive sources. So how are you going to tackle this challenge in order to reach these net zero goals?
Well, as I have already said, we have started to phase out the coal part of our portfolio. As I said, for the time being, we have like 39% of coal. We want to have like 25 by 25, and we will have probably like 12% of coal by 2030 in our portfolio. What is the biggest challenge for us is actually the central heating system, because we have still like 3.5 million people connected to the central heating system in the Czech Republic based on coal power plants. So we have to either decentralize the system, but it would mean that probably the prices would increase, or we have to keep the system centralized, but converge the coal CHPs into probably gas CHPs. But for the time being, no investment is being made because we don't know how sustainable the gas will be on the basis of the taxonomy legislation. So for the time being, we are just waiting how the taxonomy will evolve and how gas will be classified. We can, and we are certainly investing into renewables, but we have limited potential for that. We can invest into photovoltaics, and we are doing that. We have just finished the first class of projects into the so-called modernization fund. we have invested into 250 megawatts of photovoltaics, but we have no enough potential to replace the coal by photovoltaics only. So we have to go into wind investments, but there is big problem with the length of the permitting procedure for wind investment in the Czech Republic. So it takes like 5 to 7 years to build a wind farm. So it's not a solution that will solve our problem. The other problem is that the Czech government has set up the so-called Coal Commission to decide about the coal phase out, but they have set the deadline to 2038. But if you look currently at the market and the prices that are on the market, the phase out will probably happen sooner than the Coal Commission has decided. And we have a big problem. And for the time being, we have no solution how to solve it. So hopefully the legislation will evolve in a positive way regarding gas. The central heating system will converge from coal to gas, and then we will replace the remaining part of coal power plants by renewables, and certainly by nuclear later on in time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Zuzana. No, I think you bring something that is quite interesting, the fact that sometimes the pledges and the goals don't really go at the same time scales as the legislation sometimes. So that is quite interesting. So let me go to Roger, because I think that like some others, GE has pledged to include reducing scope 3 indirect emissions from your sold products as a target. So can you maybe talk to us a little bit about how you are approaching the net zero goals for your sold products, which span the full energy ecosystem, of course?
Thank you, and appreciate the question. You're correct. So we have made a scope 3 ambition to be net zero for our sold products. That includes our renewable energy business and our healthcare business, but also our fossil fuel businesses. We have a gas power business. We make jet engines, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to other technologies like nuclear technology. And the theme in which we're approaching this is innovation and technology. That innovation and technology are going to be key to realizing these net zero ambitions. But for GE, when we think about net zero, and I think this was mentioned earlier, it's one thing to say that GE is going to achieve net zero for its emissions, but it takes on bigger consequences when I explain what that means, because what we're doing is we're providing the technology that our customers need to help them succeed in their own goals. So we provide technology that powers 1/3 of the world's energy, for example, and our customers are making their own ambitions, they're making their own targets and their own goals. They need technology to be successful. So I think of it both in terms of GE's own footprint and our emissions, but perhaps even more importantly, that we're making the investments our customers are going to need so that they can meet their own targets, their own ambitions, their own commitments. And so we've made this commitment to invest today in the research, the development, the technology development to help our customers succeed. And we're doing that kind of fundamentally in two ways. One is providing the state-of-the-art technology today and making sure we're innovating today for the breakthrough technologies the world needs tomorrow. In terms of today, we make some of the world's most complicated technologies: gas turbines, jet engines, renewable energy, healthcare equipment. And we want to make sure that we are offering the state-of-the-art technology when it comes to emissions, when it comes to carbon footprint, when it comes to sustainability, that the products we're offering today are enabling our customers to accelerate their goals, meet their goals. And they can count on us to know that what we're doing is taking all this into consideration and providing the most efficient technology today. So that's what we're doing today, but perhaps even more importantly is the way we're investing in the breakthrough technologies for tomorrow. These are the technologies the world's going to need over the next 10, 12, 15, 20, 25 years in order to meet these net zero goals. And it's great. If you were to walk in our labs today, it's like almost like walking into a time machine, because you see people working on bits and components of technology that maybe we're going to use 10, 12, 15 years from now. And we're testing it out today because that's how complicated this technology is. If we're going to be successful in decarbonizing gas turbines and reducing the emissions from jet engines, we have to be making these investments today. We have to be thinking about the various paths of technology. We have to kind of solve for the physics of decarbonization. We may be able to reduce emissions, but what's the consequence of that on the wear and tear of the products, on the safety of the product, on the efficiency of the product? So we have to be balancing all these things and thinking about it now. So that's what we're doing today. We're focusing on these breakthrough technologies, knowing we're providing the most efficient technology today, but what are the breakthroughs the world's going to need, our customers are going to need 10, 12, 15 years from now? In the energy space, we think a lot about carbon capture and sequestration, investing there. Hydrogen is a fuel. Already our turbines can run on a blend of hydrogen. But I think for today's discussion, advanced nuclear small modular reactors, absolutely critical and key to meeting these net zero ambitions. We're investing a lot in the BWRX and in the Terrapower projects to make sure that advanced nuclear is part of the solution, part of these breakthrough technologies the world's going to need in the future to realize their net zero ambitions.
Thank you. Now that is quite exciting to see all this look ahead and try to solve today the problems of the future. So that's quite exciting. So let's go to Kirk. So Urenco has pledged to achieve net zero carbon emissions in advance of 2040. So that's 10 years earlier than maybe most people. So what are the challenges that you are going to face with this ambitious goal? And perhaps what should everybody else learn from what you are doing ahead of us?
Well, we'll see what everybody can learn as we engage in this journey. But I'll say the first step in getting somewhere is always figuring out exactly where you are. And Urenco has really completed this first step and documents its results in our annual sustainability report, whose preparation is directed at the highest level by the Urenco Board of Directors Sustainability Committee. The second step, establishing a strategy to achieve net zero, will set science-aligned targets covering our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and will focus on the areas of operational energy efficiency, supply chain engagement, and energy procurement and on-site generation, followed by finally neutralizing any residual emissions. As with many organizations, and I really applaud Roger's focus on scope 3 emissions, the scope 3 emissions, those associated with our wider value chain, will be the largest challenge because we have less control over them. We recently undertook a study to identify which areas our value chain we should focus on our carbon reduction efforts on. Scope 3 accounts for 44% of our total emissions in 2020. Purchased goods and services, that is category 1, made up 80% of this. However, many of the emissions do not sit with our direct suppliers. So our next steps will include refining the model on the goods and services that we purchase and sourcing more accurate emissions data from our individual suppliers. We're also exploring some opportunities for emission reduction or avoidance with key suppliers. I am pleased to report that in terms of scope 2 emissions, that is purchased energy, each of the 4 suppliers to our main facilities, EDF Energy, ENGIE, Axpo, and Exel, all rely to some extent on nuclear power and have made their own climate pledges. I'm not sure what lessons we'll be able to share, but I can commit that we will share all the lessons learned with industry on request or on demand. Thanks.
Thank you, Kirk. So, let me go now to Laurence, because I think that there is an additional dimension of these net zero pledges that is quite important. So, Laurence, I understand that Orano plans to report the emissions according to the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD framework. And of course, that is the next dimension, they're actually measuring, managing, and reporting all these emissions reductions. So what can you tell us about this, Laurence?
Well, we are still at the beginning of the journey, because we began this study in the middle of this year. I just want to go back a little and tell you our journey. During the 2020 year, and despite the epidemic, we changed our corporate strategy, both with and for CSR. And doing so, we have written our raison d'être, our corporate purpose, and enriched our annual report, particularly in its extra financial part. And that means to define and measure KPIs. And this is not as simple as it seems. And like you said before. For instance, measuring scope 3 could be a very difficult part of the business. Saying that ours is mostly up our value chain and represents more than 2/3 of our emissions. So it means that we need to do a lot with our suppliers, and we need to be sure of the measurement. And finally, it will have taken us almost 2 years to be able to publish it next year. So you see that counting and measuring is not a simple business, and you know that. But setting targets is not simpler. For instance, should we be the best in class for providing net zero or realistic and responsible industrial? And I had to bargain a lot with my colleagues at the ExCom. So this is the reason why we are going to the TCFD framework to be something like science-based target. And we are assessing our mining assets. We are assessing our transport chain, and we will also assess. I missed the third any time. The suppliers' value chain to be sure that during this, the TCFD framework is something like a climate stress test. So we will see if all those 3 items are strong enough towards climate changes, and going on measuring and trying to define the new targets. Because which is important in measuring is that you identify the way the items you have to progress in, and then define the KPIs. And I think that almost all of you have the experience that beginning to count and to measure is doing half the way to meet your targets. So this is a long journey, and we need to be very motivating for our people, because it's so boring to count the emissions that you are not sure that they are well counted. And but we try to make sense and to provide some new tools for our people to measure their emissions.
Yeah, thank you, Laurence. No, I think that several of you made this very important point, which is in order to achieve this net zero, first you need to know where you are. So that's measuring. So this is something that Kirk mentioned and Laurence just mentioned. And also then you can draft the path, and you need to have a good control of the different performance indicators, etc. And this is something that we are seeing quite a lot in this new world, where there's a lot of interest in ESGs and climate financing, etc. But quite often there is a lot of greenwashing. It's not clear whether the criteria are set up with science in the background and things like that. We will talk about that a little bit later, but I think this is a very important topic that we will discuss. So let me go back to Zuzana, because I think it's quite exciting that in the Czech Republic, recently there was a new law approved that enabled power purchase agreements to address previous market failures to facilitate the deployment of nuclear power plants. So maybe, Zuzana, can you tell us a little bit more about this law and how this is going to be useful in the overall energy market in general for new nuclear towards net zero?
Yes, well, actually, our government has achieved an agreement with the opposition parties like 2 years ago to support new nuclear build in the Czech Republic, and they have started to draft this law, which is the law called a law about transition to low carbon economy. In a nutshell, it's the law which deals with nuclear, and then we have separate other law which deals with renewables. What is the principle of this law? We call it PPA, but it's kind of offtake contract, which says that any nuclear project in the Czech Republic will be supported by this type of vehicle. It means that a power plant which will be built will sell all the electricity produced to special purpose vehicles owned by state at a guaranteed price, and this state SPV will then sell the electricity to the market. The conditions are now being negotiated between ČEZ and the government for our first nuclear project in Dukovany. And the state has started the pre-notification talks with the Commission. But as for ČEZ concerns, we are happy that basically there is, let's say, agreement of the whole political environment in the Czech Republic, that firstly, there are market failures which have to be addressed. Secondly, that any new investment into nuclear needs a state aid scheme. The state aid scheme that has been selected by the Czech Republic is based on the CFD, which has been successfully notified for Hinkley Point, but it's a bit different, as I said, because there is no strike price, but there would be a guaranteed price which is set for the whole duration of the power purchase agreement. How long the state aid and the power purchase agreement would be, it will be subject to the notification of to the European Commission. So for the time being, the law speaks about 60 years power purchase agreement, but the question is what and how it will be approved by the Commission. The power purchase agreement should be combined with a state loan, which again will be provided to the investor for this first nuclear new build in Dukovany. The investor is ČEZ, and we are now currently negotiating the conditions of this loan between state and us. And then it will be again notified to Brussels, and hopefully it will be adopted soon. The let's say contracting conditions that we have for the time being between ČEZ and state say that the state aid, the whole state aid scheme should be notified successfully by the end of next year, and then we will proceed to the next phase of the permitting procedures and then to the construction, and the first unit should be operational by 2036 or 2038 according to the schedule. It will depend on the notification talks with the Commission.
Thank you, Zuzana. Yeah, quite a complex process, but that's good. So, Ralph, you talked briefly earlier about hydrogen and the important role that it can play as an energy carrier. So, can you maybe give us a little bit more detail on your vision of hydrogen production from nuclear energy to decarbonize perhaps other sectors in addition to electricity? Maybe based on your experience with the 9 Mile Point demonstration project.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So as I said earlier, we feel like we have a responsibility because we generate 1 of every 9 zero carbon megawatt hours in the United States. And we believe we have a responsibility to find innovative ways to use that zero carbon asset more efficiently and to seek for better ways for our environment and our climate. So one of the things we did is in August, we received a DOE grant of about $5 million to explore the potential benefits of on-site hydrogen production at one of our nuclear facilities. And we chose 9 Mile Point in Oswego. And that partnership, we partnered with Nel Hydrogen, Oregon National Lab, Idaho National Lab, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And the purpose is to demonstrate the storage and normal usage of hydrogen at the station with nuclear power being the supplier of the electricity for the electrolyzer. It's a PEM electrolyzer, which is a proton exchange membrane type of electrolyzer that's being installed there. It's going to be powered by the plant. We believe this is well, the plant uses a lot of hydrogen, by the way. Nuclear power plants use a lot of hydrogen. So most of the hydrogen produced in this demonstration plant will actually be used at the plant. But we're also exploring ways of potentially transporting that elsewhere to be used for other industrial applications. And you know that's part of the longer term goal here. But I just want to expand a little bit beyond just this concept of hydrogen. With these assets we have, we're also looking at other hard to decarbonize industries, and we I brought up transportation, electrification of our transportation fleet and utility side. Hydrogen, we believe, is a long-term future potential transportation fuel. As you probably all know, there's the only vehicle available in the United States that's a hydrogen for the public is the Toyota Mirai, and it's only available in like San Francisco and LA because of the infrastructure being so small. But we believe that in supporting both the production of hydrogen and we're also looking into potentially working with hydrogen infrastructure build-out companies and looking at potential partnerships there, we can participate not only in the production of something like hydrogen, but also in its application later down the road.
Quite interesting. That sounds very interesting. So, Laurence, following up on this trend of innovation. So, of course, we know that one of Orano's top priorities is obviously innovation. So, can you tell us maybe a little bit about some of the projects that are maybe more relevant today in this area?
Yes, we have 3 fields of innovation and R&D investments. The first one is in the field of health. The research we are conducting is to develop new cancer treatments with radioelements such as lead-212 for the construction of a new laboratory for the production of non-radioactive isotopes for medical imaging. We are also doing stable isotopes facility in one of our plants. And the second field is in the power generation. We spoke about the new nuclear generation, and we are working on recycling various nuclear materials for new nuclear power generators. And the last one is the recycling of strategic materials contained in car batteries, because we have some merge competencies between this field of industry and what we do in our plants. So we do for power generation, but we try, like I said before, to have an impact in health and recycling footprint globally. So this is the 3 fields of our R&D prospects.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Laurence. So following up on this research and development area, Roger, I know that GE is working jointly with Terrapower on the Natrium Advanced Nuclear Reactor System, which is of course very innovative, but also has this additional dimension in which you plan to deploy it in order to replace coal plants. So I think that this brings a very interesting dimension towards the just transition, the not leaving anybody behind. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think it goes back to my theme from earlier that we want to decarbonize, but we want to build resiliency to the grid at the same time. We want to make energy affordable, reliable, sustainable, and do these 2 things simultaneously. And we just want to be super clear on this, that we think those are both mutually achievable goals. They're not mutually exclusive. You can do them both together. So this is a great example of that. And we do really value the partnership here with Terrapower. No one company can solve these issues alone. It's great to hear about all the collaboration on this call. And we firmly believe that we're going to be more successful with collaboration and partnership, and particularly in the nuclear space where this is particularly complicated. A lot of legacy here, a lot of partners have to come together. And nuclear energy is such a vital component of the energy transition. We're happy to play a key role in that transition, working with our partners and with other companies and our stakeholders and our customers. The Terrapower Project is a great example of carbon-free, dependable baseload that also provides flexibility with the dispatch. And we're very enthusiastic about this Generation 4 technology for the long term, and what we're doing with the partnership to develop the Natrium technology. We're proud of the fact that Natrium was selected by the Department of Energy for its Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, and the Pacific Corp Rocky Mountain Power project to advance natrium in a retiring coal plant in Wyoming is just a great example of this theme of decarbonizing energy, but growing resilience at the same time. So we're really excited about the Generation 4 reactor. We're excited about this partnership. In the meantime, in the near term, we're continuing to focus on Generation 3 plus technology as an essential bridge before the Generation 4 technology comes online and can be deployed to the grid. To that extent, we're developing the BWRX 300 to fit that need. The first reactor will be deployed in 2028. And this is a smaller, simplified version of already licensed, designed, optimized for costs, takes advantage of fuel types that are already in production. So this is back to our theme of what can we do in the near term to make meaningful impact today? And then how can we develop breakthrough technologies for the long term that the world's going to need to be successful? So proud to be having both a role to play in this Generation 3 technology, Generation 4 technology, working with our stakeholders so that we can all be successful in realizing these goals.
Thank you, Roger. So, Kirk, maybe following up on what Roger just said. So he talked a little bit about the nuclear design, but of course, the nuclear fuel is quite important in that context. So can you tell us a little bit about Urenco's work on advanced nuclear fuels, and of course, how is that going to be obviously very, very beneficial for all nuclear power plants, but particularly in this context of net zero and decarbonization?
Oh, thanks for that question, Sam. I absolutely will. But I wanted to just follow on what Ralph was saying about the importance of hydrogen-based transportation systems. And one of Urenco's adjacent businesses is a subsidiary of our joint venture with Orano, ETC. This is a subsidiary NPROX that has an expertise in high tensile strength carbon fiber containers. And they've partnered with Cummins in a joint venture to develop transportation systems suitable to replace long haul trucking and other fleet operators. So Ralph, maybe there's a potential to collaborate a little bit more even than we already do with Exelon. The way we see advanced nuclear fuels is there's really two parts to the work. First, to support increased economic efficiency of the existing nuclear plants, I think Roger called them Gen 3 plus plants, to help ensure that they continue to operate. And the second part of the work is to deliver the fuel required for these advanced reactor designs, like Terrapower, like the advanced boiling water reactor that Roger mentioned. So the first part of the work, increasing the economic efficiency of existing nuclear, depends to some extent on increasingly sophisticated fuel designs. And most recently, the advanced fuel designs being developed by fabricators are requiring concentrations of U-235 above the 5% level that have been used historically. To ensure our customers can load these advanced fuels when regulators allow it, Urenco is currently in a 3 to 4 year process of relicensing its existing plants in the UK and the US to produce up to 10 weight % U-235 fuel. Enrichments to these levels can be done using the existing facilities with relatively small capital investments. Pre-application meetings have been held with competent authorities in the UK and the US this year, and our current schedule will enable the delivery of reload quantities of this fuel by late 2024. Now, the second part of the work is to support deployment of advanced reactors that use enrichments above 10% U-235 or high-assay LEU, HALEU. Existing facilities are still critically important to facilitate the development of HALEU production because they will minimize the economic footprint of new facilities needed to produce HALEU. Although the same types of centrifuges will be used in HALEU production facilities, the arrangements of these centrifuges in production units will be different from the arrangement that currently exists to produce LEU. Nonetheless, existing facilities provide physical space, infrastructure, established workforces, and good community and regulatory relationships that can be leveraged to build dedicated HALEU facilities. In addition, the enriched uranium output of existing facilities will be used as feed material for HALEU production facilities, again, to minimize capital investment in new facilities and bring down costs. Urenco is developing the design of a HALEU production facility and believes co-location of downstream conversion and/or fabrication facilities will be key to minimizing risk and the cost of fueling advanced reactors. I hope you can't hear that puppy moving in the window, but that's what's happening there behind me. Urenco is clearly committed to fueling these advanced reactors, as we are also leading development of U-Battery, a high temperature gas reactor that produces 10 megawatts thermal of high grade process heat. This heat can be used for combinations of electricity generation and high energy industrial applications, as well as desalination or hydrogen production. It uses inherently safe prismatic trizo fuel enriched to 19.75% that will provide 5 years of operation for refueling. That's all I have, Sam, and I'll make sure this dog is let out now.
No worries. You know, I have the same problem as you do. Sometimes I have two dogs that are quite talkative, and sometimes they want to participate in all these webinars that we are participating. So no, thank you, Kirk. So I'd like to go back to Zuzana, because I want to touch on something that we touched very briefly earlier, which is the financing aspects. The fact that there is we are seeing more and more prevalence of financial instruments and taxonomies that are looking into these net zero and sustainability goals. So perhaps, Zuzana, you can provide us your views on the EU taxonomy. I think it's one of the more, I don't know if popular, but certainly it has a lot of visibility. And of course, those of you that are following this, is a little bit of a roller coaster. We have sometimes good news towards the prospective role of nuclear, sometimes not so good news. So recently we just had this letter from 10 European Union countries calling for nuclear power to be included in the taxonomy. Of course, this was in the context of the current energy price crisis in Europe, but of course, the bigger picture of overall climate. And of course, the Czech Republic is one of the leading countries in this 10-country group. So I don't know, Zuzana, whether you have some thoughts for us on that process.
Well, we have really appreciated this initiative of the 10 member states to call to the final qualification of nuclear within taxonomy file. I think that the problem of the taxonomy as such is that is subject to political debate. When the taxonomy initiative has started and the first regulation has been adopted in 2019, it seemed that taxonomy file would be science-based, facts-based, and basically that all the technologies will be qualified as they should be on the basis of facts and science. But unfortunately, it's not happening now. You certainly know that JRC has published its report on nuclear in spring this year, and everybody has expected that its conclusions will be taken into account and nuclear will be included in the so-called complementary act together with gas. But again, it became subject to political debate. For the time being, it's not clear when the complementary delegated act will be published and what kind of technology will be included. One of you actually has talked about hydrogen from nuclear. We are also looking at producing hydrogen from nuclear, but is it a safe investment once we don't know how nuclear will be tackled within taxonomy? It is not. So for the time being, we are still waiting what will happen and how nuclear will be classified. And then we can for sure invest into hydrogen produced from nuclear, and we have certainty and predictability regarding nuclear investments as such. So it is actually a crucial file for all the players within the EU. You have certainly seen that Ursula von der Leyen has acknowledged the role of nuclear after the European Council's meeting last week, which we also appreciate. And she said that without nuclear, we will not achieve the climate neutrality by 2050, and we will not decarbonize. But even if at the political level, we can see these kind of declarations in favor of nuclear, if you look, for example, at the whole Fit for 55 package, there is no word about nuclear at all. And then if you look at the political debate about taxonomy, about the complementary and delegated acts and where we are, it's still subject to political debate, which I think it's a wrong approach. And we as a company, but also the like-minded nuclear member states must do everything in order to tackle nuclear properly. And because I have been talking about CHPs and central heating system based on coal CHPs in the Czech Republic, it's not only about nuclear, it's also about gas, how gas will be qualified. And if we don't know the result yet, we can't invest into gas in the Czech Republic. So to kind of final word, hopefully the complementary delegated act will be published soon. It will contain both gas and nuclear, and both technologies would be classified on the basis of facts and science-based evidence, and will not be subject to political negotiations and debate at the EU level. Thank you.
Indeed, Zuzana, I think that this is something that the entire nuclear community has been trying to fight for, right? Making sure that the taxonomy and all these climate-related financial classifications are exactly that, based on science and technology neutral. So maybe, Laurence, maybe you want to add to this, because of course, France is also one of the 10 countries that has been leading in this effort. And of course, the French government has recently made very strong announcements on the future of nuclear in the country. So maybe you have some more optimistic news to share with us. Maybe.
I should have. No, I have no good news yet. But what is a fact, and a science-based fact, is that I told you that our Scope 3 is 2/3 of our carbon emissions. It's because most of our Scope 1 and 2 are made in France, and as you know, the electricity is very low carbon in France, thanks to the nuclear power. So this is a fact, and we are very, I would say, very aware of this, and we are quite afraid that if the mixed change in France, we will have a higher Scope 1 and 2, and we will have to do a lot to try to downsize it. So this is a very I think that for a lot of industrials in France, this is a very strong point. So yes, as you know, the French President of the Republic has just announced strong measures to support the French nuclear sector, and he wants to launch small nuclear reactors studies and maybe investments. He wants also to launch new EPRs on the French territory. And what we do in Orano is trying to support our government to do so, and trying to educate people also. And we do a lot of survey in France to know how people feel about nuclear power, and try to educate them and publish some advertisements, but also some lectures to know more about that. And what we want to do also is to demonstrate that we are not an old and has-been industry, and converting into small reactors and advanced nuclear reactor is the better way to do so, and we want to be part of the journey of that. So test and learn first. Fast is our motto, and we try to educate people about that.
Thank you, Laurence. Now, indeed, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that the nuclear industry is not an old industry. We continue to innovate day in and day out. And in fact, these sustainability goals, these have been within the DNA of the nuclear industry from time zero. So it is good that we are now maybe making them maybe much more visible, much more available to the general public. But clearly, as you said, this is nothing new. We've been doing it for a long time. So maybe in that sense, Roger, obviously, GE has been providing support to existing nuclear power plants for a long time. And right now you are also working on building or working on the Gen 3 and Gen 4 reactors, both, all over the globe. So what do you see as the key issues that we need to overcome in order to accelerate this deployment of new nuclear power plants around the world?
Thank you for the question. And it's something we talk about and think about all the time. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier about partnership and collaboration. We need to get to the point of, solid demonstration of these projects. We want to get the policies right to support them and the cost dynamics. And all of that's, taking partnerships and collaboration. I spoke a little bit earlier about some of our private partnerships, but this is where I think the government really comes into play. They can help with all of this. They can help set up the policies that encourage the demonstration projects, that encourage the research, that encourage the just a good environment for not only being able to test these projects, but sending policy signals that nuclear is here to stay and that they're going to be investing in this long term. They see it as part of the solution, and that the government's own Paris Agreement, net zero goals, a lot of good discussion on the EU taxonomy. I really appreciated that are creating the right policy incentives that bring the certainty to make these investments. Because when you're making big investments like this, you do need certainties. Uncertainty is the thing that tends to kill big ideas. And so the government, should create the right policy environments. We're seeing a lot of encouraging signs on that. The Biden administration, Department of Energy, has been supporting small modular reactors, a lot of good progress in Canada. The UK, Boris Johnson, throwing a lot of support behind this, really good discussion on the EU taxonomy and so on. But we need to continue to bring that certainty to the policy and also the support for the cost. All of these projects involve, some extent of public funding, public partnership, and taking some of the investment in the project. And talked about the Terrapower Project and Department of Energy's investment there, other governments around the world investing in these. That type of sharing of the costs, the investment in the technologies is going to help with the certainty, help get to the point where we can demonstrate them, make sure that nuclear is playing a key role in the energy transition, and that we're keeping on the list of one of the key solutions as we look at these breakthrough technologies that are needed to get to the net zero solutions.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I completely agree that government support is absolutely indispensable to incentivize this confidence and this perhaps long-term planning, and also will private and public investment. So in that sense, maybe Ralph, I don't know whether you want to comment. The U.S. administration is committed to reaching net zero emissions economy-wide by no later than 2050. And clearly the US is taking a leading role in climate change. So what do you think is the role of developed countries to support developing countries in reaching this net zero?
Well, thanks, Emma. Just to follow up real quick on Roger and what you just said, the government support is key, and I think it's extremely commendable that what DOE has done on the ARDP program and what the UK government is doing for Rolls-Royce and their SMR program in the UK, and then in Canada, what's going on there. So I do believe we are seeing movement in the right direction by large developed country governments, which I think is important. On the developing country side, I mean, at Exelon, we have experience with customers and helping our customers reach aggressive decarbonization goals. We put together solution packages that address both demand side, management of supply, as well as the supply side generation. So for developing countries, I think you need to help them both on the demand side, putting together how they should manage their decarbonization goals and get the supply. And then you also need to help them on the supply. So what the generation is, do they have renewables available? If not, or if it's insufficient, then I really think and I believe this to be the long-term solution, is small modular reactors and advanced reactors long-term. And for developing countries, that's going to require some major changes and some major help. The help will be in the financial side of this. I believe that's again where the governments will have to stand up and take a role. But also, private companies can do that. And our view in Exelon, we want to be the operator of these assets so that we can ensure they are run at the high capacity factors they need to achieve their financial goals. And in developing countries, where you can put something that's only going to cost you, 1/10 of a large reactor, and build that with reliability and with some confidence to meet a schedule and a budget, that's going to give a local government a very positive view on that potential power source. And the only way that's going to happen is if we demonstrate this elsewhere in developed countries. So we're looking very carefully at what's going on in Canada, very carefully on the ARDP program, very carefully in the UK, see if Rolls-Royce can build a fleet of SMRs in that country. If any of those happen, the ability to then migrate to a developing country with a demonstrated small reactor design is going to be very high, and that's going to be. And if you bring a company like Exelon there to be the operator of those assets, where a country doesn't have that experience because they don't have nuclear power, maybe it'll provide the confidence they need to go forward with it. So all of those pieces coming together, I think it's a potential strong positive for developing countries to enter into nuclear that may never have used it before.
Thank you, Ralph. So we are getting to the end of our session. So let me, I'm going to perhaps, Kirk, give you the last word. And I wanted to know a little bit about, you mentioned this briefly earlier, this report on decarbonizing hydrogen in a net zero economy that Urenco published recently, and perhaps how it synergizes with the recent net zero strategy that the UK government just published, which is of course both are for the UK. So any highlights that you want to leave us with before we close this eForum?
Sure. Well, let me address the UK government policy first. I guess they have recently published a net zero strategy, which we love because it places nuclear power at the heart of Britain's targets to reach net zero by 2050. And just like Ralph and Zuzana both reported, we also believe nuclear power has a key role alongside renewables in a clean energy transition through the generation of electricity and the production of hydrogen for transportation and industrial use. The UK government's policy confirmed that they hope to bring at least one large-scale nuclear project to the point of a final investment decision by the end of this political cycle, by the end of this parliament, as well as taking measures to inform investment decisions during the next parliament on further nuclear projects. So the UK government's decision was also included introduction of a regulated asset-based model. So a little bit different from the contract for differences and purchase power agreements that Zuzana was talking about, but still an important step forward. The RAB model is really central to reducing the cost of building new nuclear capacity in the UK, and it matches the availability of that asset, which is 60 to 80 years, to the recovery, the economic recovery and return of that asset. There's a really huge amount of support in the UK from businesses, unions, and the supply chain who are all looking forward to delivering on the next generation of nuclear power. And Urenco is certainly ready to play its part with UK fuel ready for UK reactors, whether they're the large EPRs or the small modular reactors proposed by Rolls-Royce. Certainly, and I think it goes without saying, I'll say it anyway, but for COP26 in Glasgow, we think it's vitally important for the nuclear industry to participate in the dialogue and debate in order to make the case that nuclear energy is a critical part of the solution for climate change and achieving decarbonization. Nuclear power, renewables, and hydrogen belong together in a net power world. And this is really the conclusion of the Aurora Energy Research study that you asked about. Those, just real briefly, the highlights of that study, which again is available on the Urenco website, is to facilitate rapid decarbonization and cut dependence on fossil fuels. Nuclear and renewables are needed together for power and hydrogen production. They can together produce everything that's required by 2050. And relying on large installations of nuclear power alongside renewables provides the minimum net present value costs associated with decarbonizing energy in the UK. There's significant greenhouse gas emissions and reductions in the use of nuclear and renewables for power and hydrogen generation. So, I'll just say that the report that Urenco commissioned is following on the UK's government's own hydrogen strategy that was published back in August, which models the cost and competitiveness of nuclear's contribution, but was not included in the hydrogen study. So including nuclear in future hydrogen study is going to be critically important to paving the way for the delivery of net zero by 2050 rather. And so we look forward to the COP26 conversations and conversations with all the governments in which we work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. And thank you everybody, Ralph, Kirk, Laurence, Roger, Zuzana. Thank you so very much for your very insightful comments today. I think, so we are going to close, maybe last couple of thoughts from my side. I think that many of us are going to be following COP26 for the next couple of weeks, and some of us will even be there. So as Kirk just said, many organizations, obviously World Nuclear Association, but many other organizations around the world have been doing quite a lot of work to make sure that nuclear energy is sitting at the table at COP26 together with all the other low carbon energy sources. So please stay tuned. One thing that I want to highlight for many of you that are watching us around the world, if you want to follow what is going on at COP, if you want to see perhaps a lot of the reports that we discussed today in this webinar, I encourage you to visit the special portal that World Nuclear Association has put together for COP26. And I think that there are links to all these events and all these publications, so you can be on top of whatever that is relevant to nuclear energy that is going to be happening at COP26. And with this, I will thank everybody that is around the world watching us live right now, and much more especially our 5 panelists. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today and share your insights. And with that, I go back to Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining the event. And we will look forward to meeting you at another event hosted by World Nuclear Association in the future. And for now, do remember to join in at the COP26 portal on our website. Thank you again.